to the club. Great. Okay, welcome everyone to our June meeting for the Arts and Culture Commission. We should go ahead and get started by welcoming our newest member, Matt Dido. Matt,
Yes.
welcome. Do you want to say a few words about yourself to introduce yourself to us? I know you've been here before, but
I've sat in before and some of you guys know my face from other things, but Portsmouth resident, tied to the arts and culture community, poet laureate, creative mornings, WSCA. I hang out at 3S, hang out at Prescott Park. So if there's an art thing, you're probably gonna see me in the crowd.
great. Well, thank you. We're delighted to have you.
And congrats on yesterday, Lit Fest.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Great. Okay. I'm just gonna keep my phone out because I think Counselor Cook was gonna try to join us. She's at a conference today. I know she had some updates for us. But our first official order of business, since we do have a quorum, though I'll wait to do our vote until Debbie is back. While we're waiting, do you want to tell us a few quick words about Lit Fest? That was?
From the poet laureate side, it was great. We're outside. I sweltered in the heat, but we got more traffic. Oh, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
The lemonade from Cheese Louise was perfect.
Oh, good.
It went well.
Good.
I was taking part in, I didn't produce the event. We were just tabling.
Yeah.
Effort by the
Those
musical.
musicals, yeah.
Yeah, music hall and NHPR.
What's the title of the event?
Lit Fest,
Lit Fest.
as in literary fest.
Yeah. And the music hall puts it on, and I know there's an effort to expand it to be a little more citywide. There's some
That's the rumor.
conversations
Yeah.
happening that we have been a part of, and I know other organizations have been a part of to potentially turn it citywide. So great to hear that it went well. And does anyone, Hope, I think I saw that you were at Market Square Day. How was Market Square Day? Tell
Very
us.
well attended. It was
Good.
very hot.
It was very
Um,
hot.
But everyone was in great spirits and the booths were busy, and it was well done. So
Good.
yeah, only good things to say. Minus I got a little sunburn, but
Yeah, of course. All right, good. Well, now that we're all here,
I report that Cabot Square Day was quite a big event.
I didn't even know about Cabot Square Day. Do tell us.
Oh, Cabot Square Day has been going on for about 3 or 4 years. It's
Okay.
the alternate version for Market Square Day.
Is it like a residence version?
Oh, actually, it's a John Marr invention.
Okay.
It's right in front of his house. The Leftist Marching Band played.
Yeah.
TJ Wheeler was there. There was a group from musicians from Lowell who was excellent, and kind of a crowd. I saw Kate there.
Good.
Yeah, it's kind of like an after hours for Market Square Day.
Mhm.
Another little gathering there. It's like 3 or 4 years they've been doing it.
Lovely.
I saw the sign, but I wasn't aware of it, so it's good to know.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Every year after Market Square Day?
Yeah,
Okay. All right. Good to know.
it's like by Coffin's Court.
Yeah. I know exactly where it is. I just didn't know it happened. So that's good.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
I went to soccer watch party on Friday night, which was a lot of fun at Liars Bench. I saw the mayor there.
I saw that.
Nice.
I didn't know that. Sorry.
So are they gonna do it again whenever US is playing?
I'm not sure. This was sponsored by a group called the New Hampshire Soccer Project. They're trying to bring semi-professional soccer to New Hampshire. And this Friday, they're hosting the event up in Bethlehem, New Hampshire.
Oh,
So
I see.
they're trying to, spread out across this state, but hoping that the brewery or other places might hold watch parties.
Yeah, there was an article on Seacoast Online that I think highlighted like the best places to see the World Cup around the Seacoast. Say like two weeks ago or something, so yeah.
We're just sharing a little about arts and culture related things we did this weekend
Yeah.
before we get started. And I went to go see Emma at the Players Race. It was so
I did
It
too.
was so great. I loved it. It was so funny. It was so thoughtful. It was a really lovely.
Thank
We had a
you.
great time. We had a great time.
I will say really quickly too, the 603 brass band was out in front of the church on Friday night and it was fantastic. There was crowds gathered around them and people were dancing and having fun and it was just such a good vibe. So that was
Love that.
really cool to see.
Are they doing anything on a regular basis or is it?
I think they play like every Friday. And I have
No.
I have heard some things about some neighbors not being super fans of them. but I love it. So maybe that conversation will come up eventually,
All
but.
right, we'll see
but
if we
I
hear
thought it was-
anything.
And they don't have any amplification, so they're
Yes.
following the rules.
Okay, gotcha.
They don't need amplification.
They're fine on their own. All right, well, we'll move right into the agenda then. So there's a vote to approve the minutes for the May 18th meeting. Can I get a motion? Karen, second?
I second.
All right, any discussion, edits? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any abstentions?
Apologies for having to miss.
All right, next we'll move on to work group reports. So would like to start us off. Teresa, go. Communications.
Let's go. So I sent around, if everybody saw the draft copy of the different commissioner bios. Matt, I guess I will send you the link maybe after this meeting, and then I will add Matt. It's just a photo and a short description about yourself, in which we have on our Arts and Cultural Commission webpage of the website for the city. I also sent around my first draft, working draft of the community events, low cost, no cost annual city events. Got some good feedback, got a couple more events on there, which I'm still adding. And then Karen suggested when you suggested the senior center, I thought, why not just add a list at the end? So I called it local calendars, resources, and newsletters to check out. So I added public library events, library passes, the Chamber of Commerce events website, the senior center newsletter, the Go Portsmouth City calendar, and the Portsmouth City newsletter. So anyone has more resources, something like that, so then we don't have to like take all of those events and translate them. It's on our way to a calendar, but not quite. That is, I think, coming along well. Ken sent me a decent list, so I just have to add a few more of that. But if anyone has any other events to add to that list or that they think of,
I think we do, so I'll
Yeah, I
make
saw
sure.
your email.
So
Yeah.
do.
But I owe you the
Sorry.
like, I was like, we'll do it, but then
Totally
we haven't
fine.
done it. Let me make a note of that.
I only really ripped through Strawberry Bank's website before I was like, this could take me longer than I'm willing to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I try to do that. So anything, yeah, feel free to send it to me. It's not a huge deal to edit it after, but definitely it's Monty and Stephanie's time. So we just like want to be really cognizant of that. And then the other thing is me and Hope are just chatting over here on the side. We're gonna meet about 10 days to talk about like the logistics for the filming. So hopefully like we can get that rolling. I think we decided last month, like really August to push, but July to plan. So we'll do some preliminary stuff for that.
And what's the filming again?
Was originally, we were calling it Fall for the Arts. And it was sort of this series as the New Hampshire State Council of the Arts was kind of getting like completely defunded and ripped apart, that we would kind of highlight the local arts, highlight ourselves, and then move from that into highlighting, I think we talked about doing like local artists, citizens, seeing like how the arts have changed their lives. All that being said, that's sort of like a really big idea still, I think, and pretty broad. So hopefully, and I think that's also part of the reason it's hard to get it off the ground originally. So kind of like hammering it out, forming it better, then we'll come back with like probably prompts and a schedule.
And queue up, yeah.
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 I have a technical question, maybe suggestion, but on the webpage where we're gonna be getting feeds in from Portsmouth Historic Society, Strawberry Bank, et cetera, is there a way that they can send you the website, I guess, URL that you don't need to get it ever again? So basically that URL is not gonna change and it's always gonna be a live update of whatever their most current events are.
Yeah, and that's
So
what
is
I
that
kind
you were
of,
thinking?
yeah, that's what I was
Okay.
starting to add to the end, like any of the institutions that maybe have like a lot of events or maybe mix it up more
Yeah.
often, like it isn't, because what I have is annual events and reoccurring. So like for that, it was like Locals Night at Jimmy's Jazz we were talking about. It's like every Monday night. So like that one's kind of easy and hopefully somewhat evergreen, but for the other big places, like I think it is easier to just
just get that URL, because my
Just-
URL, like for my classes, never
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
I'll change my classes, but the URL stays the same.
Perfect.
So that way you're always getting the most updated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And I
I'm
think
assuming
that's
that's the same for everybody.
probably the best way to go about that, but yeah, I think for the low and no cost events, I have it up right now. I just put like Porch Fest is on there, Spring Fest, Portsmouth Pride, the River Fest, 250 celebrations. We were gonna put a link to a calendar like that, so hopefully, like, I like the idea of adding the other calendars, because then it is like a little bit less maintenance if we just go once a year and click every single link to check. It's
Yeah.
probably easier than, hey, is this still an event you're having in July? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's, yeah.
RSS feed is what you're thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah.
My technology guru over here.
Anything else for you in communications?
I don't think so. The last thing that was on our list, kind of that was somewhat pressing coming out of our past few meetings, was like the artist resources list that we talked about. So that I have not really started yet, but I think that's a good next thing to also just start putting together resources and figure out what we want to do for that. More resources.
Great. Thank you. Collaboration resources?
So we're meeting after this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what's exciting is that the housing authority, who connected us with, was very prompt in expressing interest, and so we decided to just invite them. So for sure, Andrea and also maybe Craig are gonna be joining us today. I think Karen has some updates for us that we will be able to update you about at the next meeting.
Yeah, okay.
But we are also waiting to hear back about the approval of the budget should be coming from a different source.
Yeah.
For the we'll discover. Something that we are really still thinking about is we really want, if and when feasibility study is approved, we really want to kind of enhance our group. And I think the fine line that we're thinking about walking is, are these folks whose expertise and knowledge is relevant to our work going to be actually members of our core group, or will we use them more as guests because they're all very busy? So I think we will be discussing that.
Yeah.
And then we have a site visit.
Yeah, I'm working on that. So we're still trying to get some dates to go out to the factory out in Manchester. I was told this morning that they have 2 new artists in residence that
Great.
are now taking up residence there, living there. Obviously, working there, so that's gonna be pretty cool to see. So
Yeah.
hopefully updates and times for our 2:30 meeting. And then the other thing I would just throw out there to the group is that one of the things we are starting to work on is possible sites for artist live workspace across the city of Portsmouth. So if you're aware of anything and everything that we should be considering, we're starting to compile a prioritized list. And maybe in a meeting or two, we might be able to at least share a draft or so of where we're at. But we're in the early stages of that, and we are starting to collect some locations.
I have
Which
a
I'm not
question.
to say that we actually may have some locations, some possibilities.
Just, I think the town of Newington has control over everything happening at Fox Run, not Portsmouth. And I believe that any sort of housing there is not an option.
Right, yeah.
The city council over there, I don't think approves any housing east of the highway.
Yeah.
For reasons. But a little bit further down the street in Industry Way or whatever that is back behind where there's
Stoneface, like where the brewery is, no.
where Stroll is and those.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
At one point, I remember that they had rezoned that whole area to include the possibility for commercial on the first floor, residential above. I don't know if there's any other ability to develop over there or if all development
On Peas?
behind
or behind
Mark's
Mark's
Basket on Woodbury.
Yeah, and that's zoned, I think it's a gateway, isn't it?
It's a gateway community.
Right.
I just don't know if they're out of
It's a good-
space or not.
It's a good
or
Post,
if,
yeah,
who owns the land, if it's possible there, but I know that that is already a possible housing.
yeah.
Still know if there are new developments or if there's current housing available there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Eli. Yeah, we're having Counselor
Well,
Cook guide us through this as well, obviously.
I did want to report, since Councilor Cook's not here, I had a conversation with her about the budget approval
Mhm.
because the newspaper reported that the 65,000 was
Mhm.
taken out of the budget.
Mhm.
The CIP.
But Kate has some reassurances that the housing trust will fund it. And apparently they're meeting tomorrow. So apparently, cross your fingers, but it'll get funded by the housing trust at their meeting tomorrow. And if that doesn't happen, apparently Kate has some reassurances from a few counselors
Mhm.
that it'll get put back into the budget. So if you read the newspaper and panicked like I did,
Yeah,
we didn't. I mean, based on what the newspaper wrote, it was cause for panic, but based on what Kate had done behind the scenes, it looks like we're still in good shape.
yeah. I watched the playback. I think that's all. This is what I saw online as well. Question about tomorrow night. Do we need representation there?
I've asked that question of her and I have not heard.
Okay.
So I've had a separate email exchange with her about this exact same thing where she said the trustees, the exact statement. So it was cut from the budget, all of our hard work on the CIP process.
Mhm.
But it has been moved to funding from the below market rate housing trust fund. That's the name of the trust fund, below market rate housing trust fund. The trustees meet on the 16th to release the funds. I'll keep everyone posted. To which I responded, please let me know if you need a statement from us, someone to come.
Great.
Oh my gosh, look at that.
Good time.
Can you admit her? Thank you. Hello? Kate, are you there? Oh, she's got her microphone and camera off.
I'm here, but I'm in a loud hallway, and I'm holding my phone, my computer, so.
All right, we can see and hear you. Hello, we were just talking about, it was perfect timing. The funding the study for the live work, so.
Oh, good.
Hearing your email, but perhaps you want to give us a little more information, specifically if we can be of any support for tomorrow night.
I don't think that it's necessary. It's not, the trustees of trust funds will be meeting. They have a memo already telling them what the study is. There's a determination from the legal department that it would qualify for funding from the trustees of trust funds, and all they needed was a vote from the council, which we did have, to direct them to release the funds. So we moved it out of the budget and to the trustees of trust funds funding from the this particular trust that is for affordable housing. And the reason I did that is that the council was making a concerted effort to cut funding wherever possible, and this came up as low-hanging fruit.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for finding an alternative solution to funding this much needed feasibility study. So thank you for that, and do keep us posted. I know you're at a conference, so I'm guessing we only have you for a certain short period of time. So I'm happy to kind of turn it over to you for any other updates. I know on the burning issues list, we had the city banner program for an update, but if there's anything else pressing that you want to share with the commission.
There's another delivery coming through the hallway here. Give me just a second.
Sure.
It's gonna be loud for a second.
Got it.
So
we'll come back to you.
I think he's pretty much gone. Okay. So as far as the banner program, my understanding is that the city manager and other people from city staff are going to show up in about 3 minutes. They said around 1:30 to give you guys an update. So
Okay.
you should have city staff arriving relatively soon because they knew Sean wasn't there to do that today.
Okay.
I did have
Great.
Okay, quick question. If things do get approved tomorrow and the funds are released from this below market housing trust, would we know right away tomorrow? And therefore, I'm just wondering timeline wise, would we when would we potentially have access to the funds, assuming they are released and approved by the trustees?
Well, the funds would be released, but the funds, it's not like the funds come to us somehow. What happens is they vote to release the funds, and then the city manager can issue an RFP for the study.
Okay.
They do understand that there's a preferred vendor.
Okay.
Gotcha. But do we have to wait for the new budget to take effect July 1, or is this kind of independent of the budget? So once the funds are released, essentially the city manager can start that RFP process immediately.
Yes, she can start the process immediately, but it will take a few weeks to write an RFP. So
No
the
kidding.
timeline is similar, that it's
Yep.
just kind of pushed up a little bit.
Gotcha. Alrighty. Thank you for that
Thank
update.
you.
We'll wait for our friends to come about city banner. Was there anything else you wanted to share with the commission?
I think those are the big things. I wanted to say welcome to Matt.
Yes.
Thanks.
And I think that's basically it. So
Okay. Do we have any other burning questions or issues for Counselor Cook while she's with us? I want to let you go back to your conference if we don't have anything for you.
I'm sorry that I'm in the middle of a hallway. It's the only place that I could find. I tried being outside, but I didn't get a good signal. So,
Not to worry.
This was
Thank you for
unfortunately
taking time
the
out of
best
your
I could do.
day to tune in and chat with us. I don't hear anything in the room for you, so we will let you go. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next month.
thank you. And I'm sorry I had to miss today.
Thank
Alright,
you for everything
thank
you do.
We'll talk
for
to
the
you later.
arts. Thank you.
Thanks.
We
Bye-bye.
appreciate you.
So if the city manager is coming, we can ask her about the RFP and
Sure.
the vendor also.
Yeah.
That came right in the middle of your work group report. So do you have anything else to report from collaboration and resources? Okay, good. All right, great. Thank you. The only thing I think we have from hi, Trevor. Are you coming in to talk with us or no? Arts and Culture Commission? Is it, I was gonna say, we were expecting a few folks.
goodness.
Counselor Cook just told us a few people were coming. Come on in. Hello,
Hello.
Hey.
welcome.
Hello.
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 Ready whenever you.
Yeah, you're welcome to sit anywhere
there's
around the
the
table
chair.
too.
Yeah.
Hi.
And just so you know, we are recording on the Zoom as well. Counselor Cook just gave us a 3-minute warning that you all were joining us, so there they are. To talk about the city banner program, correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great.
At least where we're at.
We'll turn it over to you. We want to be mindful of your time. Thank you for coming down to speak with us. So we're eager to hear from you.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Conard, City Manager, and I'm joined by Deputy City Attorney Trevor McCourt
Hello.
and DPW Director Peter Rice
Hi.
and awesome legal intern Abby Cargile. And we are here to give you an update on where we stand with the banner policy that was requested by the council some months back. As you can imagine, it's work in progress that is much more complex than you might imagine at first blush. We have to balance competing interests with First Amendment speech, with the myriad potential users of such a banner. And then there's the whole resource and bandwidth consideration of what staff can do. And in my lifetime of 6.5 years, we've only done one set of banners, and those were the 400th. And when we do them, we view them as government speech, and they could be a platform for a whole host of things. So I'm going to stop there. Do you want to give 30 seconds on your hat, and then we'll talk about resources?
Sure. So, we've gone through several different iterations, variations, ideas of what the banner program would look like. Kind of balancing, as Karen said, the real competing interests here. And I think where we are approaching now, and what we've kind of spoken with Counselor Cook about is starting with something that's kind of narrow, and then maybe seeing how it goes and allowing it to grow as we kind of see what works and what doesn't, right? Because there are many things that a banner program could be. And so it's kind of trying to figure out what it should be and, what works in the city. So again, it's kind of an iterative process. I mean, you can think of, outdoor dining looked different than it does now, right? You kind of try it and see how it works, and then you modify it as you go. And that's kind of how, anyway, I see it as I've been working on the draft and as we've been moving forward. But really, I think where we see the intent right now and where it could be the most useful while respecting staff time and our existing resources, the continuing services that we're seeking to provide, is something that provides a platform to, really advertise for and promote, those events that have been identified by the city council policy. I mean, I think that's really what the most effective thing is going to be in the short term, and then maybe you can layer in other items over the years. But I guess with that, I'll turn it over to you with what our existing resources are, and I can fill in the blanks as
Well, you
necessary.
about resources, we were trying to develop a map,
Yeah.
an understanding of where the potential full range of banners could go. And you have the obvious stuff, right? The downtown core, and I think that's where we're proposing to start our pilot, if you will. Then you have the outer routes that are gateways in. I think Islington in, the Market Street extension in, different size banners. Don't love that, but that's for another day. So we tried to scale up in a way that felt manageable. We also, because we don't have any money budgeted for this, we tried to assign cost estimates of what the work would entail and who would do the work. I mean, we have literally talked about this for at least 12 hours.
Yeah.
Around and around and around. So with that, Peter, hand back.
So as the manager said, we're looking at 5 zones roughly. They include Maplewood Avenue Bridge, which has some utility period lighting, which would include AC Hotel, and that little loop, and those could be larger things, which we don't want to talk about too much at the moment. Market Street down towards the salt piles and out. The gateway or the entrance into the city off the Memorial Bridge, which would be really that area to maybe Chapel Street. Then Congress from Market Square to roughly Maplewood Avenue, and then the west end, Islington on the far end of the area. These aren't insignificant efforts. It takes 2 staff 2 days to set up 36 of these. So it's a lot of we have 36 sets of brackets right now. The over and under stanchions that stick off the period lighting that we have downtown. And the challenge is that, you put those on, you take them off, things break, things get damaged. So it takes time to do this, and equipment as well. So, we've looked at the cost of the banners. We've gone through and kind of come up with some estimates. And it's not insignificant. I mean, it's in the, $5,000 to $7,000 an event. And that's something that the city does not have budget for, nor would I advocate the city spending on that, because it benefits other folks. So
We should talk about how we plan to procure. The idea would be we would provide a template which allows users to fill in their event name, their event date, perhaps their URL or something related to that. But that the banners look branded, they look cohesive. And how do you do that in a way that respects the different users of the banner? Right, so if we're controlling the program, we're also controlling the procurement. So we would dictate what they look like, where they get made, how they get installed. And with that comes an estimate or an invoice that Peter and his staff have been working on. So Peter, can you give a rough estimate of someone who wants to put up in the pilot zone of just the main core, the truly the downtown?
it's roughly not $8,000.
Does that include the fabrication of the banners?
That includes banners as well.
Okay. Banners, making them and installing them.
Yep.
The other thing we talked about in our pilot was that we would pilot this from April to October, April, May, June,
September, to the end of September.
Yep. So we would pilot this where you could request banners in one of two periods, April, May, or June, or July, August, September. And you want to be judicious with your ask and your locations, and in thinking there may be such demand for banners, right? We're trying to provide a little, how does everyone get to play? But we don't want banners during bad weather, so that's why we don't start until April, and we don't want them to be in the way of the scarecrows and then getting into bad weather. That's why the window is April to September.
As well
In our
as
pilot, this is our,
wreaths as well.
and the wreaths. But this is our pilot. This is the language in our pilot that is still in draft form that we've shared with Councilor Cook, but it has not been brought back to council.
In its draft form, just out of curiosity, the 8,000 or so that was quoted, is that for 36 of these banners?
32, I'm sorry, I misspoke.
So is there something in the concept here for a business to maybe secure 5 or 10 or so, or is it 32 or bust?
So, and this is the challenge, right? Because, I only want 5 and I want it for 2 weeks. I only want, it's
2 weeks, I think, makes a lot of sense. It should be up for a long period.
a month.
Yeah.
But even so, it's like the taking them up and pulling them down is the challenge.
That's the
for us.
labor, yeah.
So, and it's the higher chance of damaging things, and so.
But curious if multiple businesses could get in on the same cycle, or is it being approached as one business for 32?
This is why it takes
Good
time
feedback. We
to
don't know.
pull together a program.
Yeah,
Because every iteration, every permutation you come up with,
Typically printing,
Mhm.
printing one design for say 32
Right.
is one cost. Printing 32 divided by 5 is almost 5 times bigger. So there's efficiencies, economies of scale
Yeah.
typically. So I think that's
Because as and this is subject to change, don't take it to the bank, but I think as currently drafted, once the outside of the pilot, which we can talk about, but when the program is fully up and running, it'd be when you get a zone, like each group gets a zone basically. So you get like either the downtown area or you get the Market Street Extension area or whatever, and that's but then there's other hurdles of we only have so many brackets, so how do we get more brackets? Who pays for those? I mean, there's other concerns of how to get from the pilot to the full program.
Sure.
But I think that's
We
the
have enough there. We have 32 brackets,
Right.
32 bracket sets right now. That's why we picked 32.
I'm also curious, so there's gonna be this template, this submission, this request form. And is there gonna be like a process for you to be able to select who is deserving to be
Yeah, so
featured
that's-
or not?
so
That's
from the
tricky.
First Amendment standpoint, that's actually the most important part of it, right?
Yeah.
Is the selection process.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? And that's why the policy is really structured to set up not so much, well, I don't know, not so much what, but what it's supposed to structure is really, it's almost a community events calendar, or something, right? With only a few slots to be advertised. I mean, and it's the city's calendar.
Yes.
The city controls it, and the city gets to decide what events, it wants to promote, and what events or groups or whatever it wants to promote. And, that's hard, right? I mean, you're inherently picking winners and losers, and that becomes a challenging thing. So, it's going to be incumbent upon us as staff and the city council to provide really clear instruction and criteria, almost like an RFP, kind of with that clear criteria, and then it's gonna come down to assigning somebody good to, work through that and make good choices.
It's just like outdoor dining. We had to stand up membership from different staff who work very hard to permit and approve locations in the spring, and then there's DPW who goes and sets up barriers and measures and makes sure that the plans are laid out in the way that they are. So we envision a similar type staff involved with this. We just don't know who that is yet. And to be honest, there aren't a lot of people with bandwidth who can take this on. So for many reasons, we were hesitant to even put up banners for the 400th. And in my short tenure, it was hard to articulate and hard to manage. And it was easier to say no than to try and fit a bunch of square pegs into a bunch of round holes. And yet here we are, because it sounds like there are folks in your world that may find value in the banners. So we're trying to strike the balance of what's the value to you and what kind of banner program would be useful and helpful to the community that would benefit from them, and would you be willing to pay, and what is that amount? We've been going around and around. So it's good to come here at this juncture to figure out, how does this all sound?
I just want to thank you for all your efforts, and just as when I was co-chairing the cultural plan, we heard a lot from all of our focus groups, so we get a huge number of people that come in for the arts events just for the day.
Yeah.
And where your map is taking place, you're hitting all the major entry points coming to the city, which I think is great. One idea, and maybe this is something you've already thought about, that turns the 32 into the 64 is obviously all these banners are two-sided. And could there be a partnership with two entities, two organizations, that one's got the front, one's got the back? Again, people that are going out of the city, or coming into the city have to go back out, or vice versa. So just thinking of another way that we could double exposure, and this clearly came again out into the cultural plan from all the focus groups. So just thank you for all your efforts.
Interesting.
I would also add, I think this idea first came up, our former member Jason Goodrich brought this up because I know he was meeting with some of the arts leaders, and they've been talking about this for a long time. But the example was given to our commission. I don't know if it came to you all. Nashua has a very successful banner program. So there may be somebody there who has some of the answers you are currently trying to reinvent the wheel on.
We've talked to some similar sized communities, they've got staff.
They have staff.
Just do banners.
Right. That makes sense. But some of the considerations around what gets selected and some of those things,
Yeah.
there may be
Right.
a
That would be
precedent already set.
They run into First Amendment issues there too, so that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they got in a little bit of trouble there.
Dover has banners as well.
Do they,
Yeah.
do they have, I thought they ended up suspending their program for a little bit to.
Well, National lost if they recently, their banner program was found to be unconstitutional.
Right.
That's fun.
So maybe
Nashua, you said?
Nashua, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's one of the court cases I had to read very closely and
Could
purposely.
still be an example for how to avoid those.
Not to do.
That's exactly what Trevor's referring to.
Yes.
That's why we're.
That's why I'm talking about, you have to have the staff and you have to have all the review, we have to have the control. It has to really truly be, unfortunately, like I understand, the goals of all of you, right? And all the organizations out there, and I get it. And but from our perspective, in order for it to be, fair and everything else, we have to have the control over it. It has to be the government speech.
And I have a question for you all. In addition to considering banners, what else might be something that would help you promote your event or your organization that we could be a part of that may be banner adjacent or, something in addition to banners? Are you finding that's the one thing everybody really is gunning for, or are there other things we could help be a part of? I don't know what those could be.
I know the communications work group works very closely with Monty and Stephanie, and newsletters and what, there's already some things already in motion.
We've been working to beef up our webpage on the city website to include a lot more traction and visibility on local city events, because there's just so many calendars.
Right.
That's something we've been talking about, I think, really since day one. Everyone is kind of, I think, having this, it's not an issue, but a visibility issue of how to get people to know about these events before the day of. And, is it the city newsletter? Is it just our webpage with a list of check out this calendar, check out this calendar, check out this calendar? And what's the right balance there? Because the more obviously we add to our list, then the more it gets pushed to Monty and Stephanie if it needs updates. And so that's what we're working on right now too, is, how to get that visibility. If someone Googles events in Portsmouth, is it our page that comes up? Should it be our page that comes up?
Yeah.
So.
And I would just add to that, what's the underlying issue that we're trying to solve for? And it was people, again, not finding out about events or not being aware of it. And my only other thought is, could there be a rolling marquee downtown? Maybe it's at the informational booth down near where the Chamber Collaborative has their spot. And I think the issue is people coming into the city, there was no place for them to be oh, what's coming next? Or I want to come back next weekend, or I'm staying here for a few days. So if there could be a rolling marquee, especially for Market Square Day, we had so many people downtown, that could alert people to what's coming next. So that could be in addition to, but that's the problem I think we're trying to solve for, is increasing awareness.
I wasn't here for the permitting of the music hall marquee, so to speak. I do know we were just looking at how there are very restrictive sign, there's very restrictive sign language in the historic district. signs cannot be
That's what I was
lit
gonna
from within
mention.
Yeah.
and all that fun stuff. So maybe there's a way to figure out what to achieve what you're trying to achieve.
I think likely a way I appreciate all the work you put into this banner program. When you were looking at it, were you looking at it through an arts and culture or a nonprofit? Like, were there restrictions on who would be able to get those banners? And if so, how are you restricting that? Nonprofits or?
Yeah, and
Okay.
it tracks from the city council policy. So the city council's already passed a policy and it, limits it to the kind of arts and cultural events.
Got it.
That's the narrow focus of it. So it's not just like any event, it's not just even any nonprofit event. It's specifically arts and
culture,
cultural.
nonprofits,
It's
those two distinctions.
it's not for profit as well.
We also have Councilor Cook on the line.
I don't.
She
Did
had
we
it.
may have passed it for, I'm trying to remember if it was for
I'm
profit.
not sure they
we had that
restricted to
big-
just nonprofit. Because Jimmy's was a good
Jimmy's was
example.
the,
Established.
They team with a nonprofit when they do that.
Trevor's pulling up the policy now.
Was that,
They've done their events, they team up with, or supporting a nonprofit when they do it.
Sure. I just don't remember from the initial
Yeah.
readout at city council.
because a lot of the conversations we've had too have been about how to make access to this more equitable and financially equitable. At the price point you're quoting, they're gonna be nonprofits that will be out of their budget scope entirely. So in thinking about this and other ways of marketing at kind of a grassroots level, right, of people who are just walking around for the day, I think addressing the signage ordinance is probably what we're gonna look at next, whether it's in the HDC or outside of the HDC, but looking at that and seeing if there are ways we can still thread that needle of respecting the historic preservation of our downtown spaces while also allowing our businesses the opportunity to market perhaps a little more.
And you know what would be great to Karen's point, about finding other examples out in the wild of communities where you see they're handling that approach in a way that respects the context of the historic character of the district or the street or the landscape, because it would be great to learn from those.
Yeah.
If you're out and about this summer, go take
And I'm
pictures.
wondering, could it literally be rolling? Could it be a marquee, almost like your speeding sign that the police put up, could there be, and it goes to different parts of the city depending on, it literally rolls. It has we're gonna put it here today, we're gonna put it over there. I don't know, just thinking out loud, but.
I think they have them for Children's Day, right? Near State Street Saloon in the Hammer.
We had the big message board out.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
and it-
two or
that
three
was
for the whole city.
That was the only way.
Yeah, so that
So,
technically you're not supposed to be using variable message boards for anything except for traffic related
But we do all the time.
management. So, until we are told we can't.
Yeah.
But the long and short of it is, you could do something, you could dress it up, you could make it less intrusive and, make it something, but
And just so you all know, in an effort not to completely miss the boat on the 250th, Peter and his staff are scrambling to put up some American flags in some of these major downtown banner areas.
Just say as an organization that is involved in a lot of the 250th planning, there is so little interest from folks out there in the 250th right now, so.
That is so interesting.
It's very fascinating. We literally had a tour the other night and asked a room full of 20 people if any of them felt there was any interest in the 250, and they all just said no. So I love that you're doing it, but
Plug for Strawberry Bank, they put on a series yesterday with excerpts from Ken Burns' American Revolution.
Yeah, we worked
series.
with them on that. It was a great.
And that was well attended. There were probably 60 people in the room. That was great.
Yeah,
That was
what's lovely is people are coming. It's local folks, I find. It's not really the tourism driver we thought it
Right.
would be, but it's our local audiences that are coming. So it's interesting to see that it's not such a driver for tourism.
What'd you find on the policy? Anything helpful?
Yeah, so eligible entities are limited to community-based nonprofit organizations and arts and cultural institutions that promote the public good. Banners shall only be for the promotion of arts and cultural institutions, individuals, or themes.
So because the and somewhere like Jimmy's is eligible because it's an arts and cultural institution.
It also has to promote the public good.
Ooh, I mean, that's up to you guys to decide.
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem to totally get for-profits out of the mix if they.
It doesn't totally get
Yeah.
profits out of it.
Yeah, I do have one question on partnership though,
Is,
because
wait, is what you just read online somewhere?
It is.
It is, it's under city council policies, and it's city council policy number 2025-02.
Which means it was the second policy adopted last time.
that's right.
2025
Two.
-02.
Yes.
One question, Peter, to your point, it came up in passing, but the thought that Jimmy's was supporting a nonprofit or something, it brings up the idea of partnership. And at one point we were considering, are these banners or the cost of these banners something that could be sponsored by another entity to get their logo up on something pre-approved by a nonprofit? I don't know if that's come up in conversations at all, but that could be a way of mitigating costs for smaller nonprofits that can't afford the full invoice costs.
So at this iteration, the logos providing advertising for a for-profit would not be included, would not be allowed.
Unless it serves unless you determine it's an arts and cultural institution serving the common good.
Trevor can speak to it. The way the banner is going to be structured, it would be informational with a contact for the nonprofit. If they have an outside donor, they would not be using it for advertising.
Okay, so those costs could not be mitigated then?
Well, they could.
You could
They
offer
just wouldn't
something
get,
else
they
with
wouldn't get the
sponsorship.
logo up on it.
Yeah, okay.
You could put it as part of some other sponsorship package. I don't know. I mean, that's sure you guys, but
Internal stuff.
Yeah, what I also find, and sorry, I was not part of the original conversation. So I'm very intrigued by this very, very fine line because such a tool to me does represent, right, the city. And in addition to the public good, to me, there's also an expectation of quality that I would have. If I look at the flag and I'm saying that the city of Portsmouth is encouraging me to visit this exhibition, and then I go and the exhibition is subpar, that quality of the product is associated with the destination of the city
It
of
could be,
Portsmouth.
yeah.
So
There's no separating it at
there's,
that point.
yeah, so in addition to the public good is what is that, all of a sudden a commission that, verifies the quality of the product, and the quality is so subjective. Ay.
You're right.
Yeah.
Back to, that's why we hadn't been in the banner business and.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you see, right, a big celebration or something that is powered by the city of Portsmouth, I can see, the 400 or, something that is objectively the city of Portsmouth. Anyway,
Longer.
sorry, I don't want to play against the interest of the commission, but I was not part of the original. and I
Than a
can see-
one-day event also.
Huh?
Longer than a one-day event
Yeah.
would be helpful.
When the 400th banners funded, was that a city in the budget?
Fundraised by the 400th.
Okay.
We donated the time, the labor to put them up. But because of the sheer magnitude of all the events as part of the 400th that we supported it must have been in the 5 approaching 6 digits over time in terms of public works, fire and police. We now institute a policy where if it's an event on city property with city resources, we're gonna bill for it. The poor Halloween parade's a great example. We started with them first, I think.
Yeah, right, that makes sense.
So. It's hard to, they're important and
Yeah.
it's hard to pay for all of them.
So what are next steps from here? Do you need anything from us at this juncture? Beyond what we've discussed today? What?
It would be great when we return this to council it's gonna be their guidelines. We're gonna shop the guidelines.
Yeah, it'll come back to the city council as an informational, what the policy is, an informational item. I mean, what the policy does, the city council policy does, is it directs the city manager to come up with her own policy. So the next step would be, we will bring a city manager policy, which is the one that we have in draft form that, we're still fine tuning here.
Mhm.
But that would be the document that will come back to the city council as an informational item. Obviously, if the city council finds issue with anything that's in there, they can direct us so at that time.
Right, and as we've done with bigger plans, cultural plans, a great example, we'll bring it to council as an informational item. We'll ask for it to have airtime with the general public and we'll ask for acknowledgement or acceptance at a future date. But I think we'd structure it similarly, but say, look, we'll welcome any comments for the next 30 or 60 days, and then it will become, we'll let you know when the final product hits the streets. We should have said at the outset, maybe you did, this would impact the 2027 season at this rate.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to just, I missed that, part of the policy is, because again, trying to respect staff time and I know this will be a challenge, but creating application windows will be important for us, here's the period of time that you have to apply, and if you don't meet the deadline, you don't meet the deadline. Just to manage ability to, it's not just on a rolling basis,
we help support that process at all? Like I'm thinking like what Park does with Public Art Review. Can we
Yeah.
help support if this all moves forward, the kind of review and selection of folks for the banner process? Is that something our commission, or where
So-
can we support this process as a commission?
Yeah, so the selection, I mean, and this is the Nashua case. This is Nashua.
Hmm?
Nashua screwed this up for us already. Or showed us the
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
showed us the way already.
Fair way to say it, yeah.
It has to be, you know, there has to be criteria. And the criteria have to actually be implemented and followed. And it has to be implemented and followed in reality by government employees, right? By
Okay.
people under the city managers, you know, I mean, believe me, we talked around and around about like, you know, getting different, you know, whose feedback do we need and, you know,
Right.
refer to committees or whatever, but that's really not what's permissible under the Nashua case, unfortunately.
It'd be good when we bring the policy forward for
Yeah,
for informational purposes, for you to weigh in, to come to a council meeting, to speak to it, to
Yeah.
write us a letter saying these points make sense, but could you think about X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
Because we would very much like to include your thoughts to the extent we
Yeah.
can, with our policy and guidelines for in-house running of this program.
And when do you anticipate having it back to council? Do you have even
Not maybe July
yeah,
13th.
July.
We're aiming for July 13th. We have one
Okay.
meeting in July.
That gives enough time, yeah, a
Great.
lot of time to let it sit.
Adjust.
Okay.
You guys can either come or send a letter of support for the concept, or join on Zoom and participate that way. There are many different ways you could be at that meeting. And or if you don't love meetings, just shoot us an email, hey. Or invite us back to a commission meeting. We can do that.
Thank you all for taking.
Yeah,
this
thank
up.
you for taking the time
Thank
and
you
for all
for
your hard
serving.
work on this.
Yeah,
We appreciate it.
It's important.
Thank you.
All right, you have your hair.
Thank you, thank you.
Good afternoon.
You. All right, Jeffrey, did you get all that in your? That was a lot of information. I tried to jot some down too.
So
I have to watch it back.
yes, I'm curious, so this was something that evidently was on the, like, on the scorching, like, desiderata, like, big desires of this group. How do you feel after you hear this? Because, you know, it's so weird, sorry, I feel like, oh my gosh, poor people, like, it's gonna be a major headache.
Yeah.
So I like, how do you do it fairly and make sense? Sorry.
No, I feel like this was really Jason's.
Yeah, I think
Pet
all of us
project.
kind of knew that once the city got the directive to do this, it would come back more restrictive than we wanted it to
Way
be.
more
I think we all knew that would be the case because as with anything that we put out, but the city has to approve every single thing that we say as a commission. And that's just our commission. Imagine every arts and cultural
Absolutely.
nonprofit in the city trying to put out their own thing. And, you know, can't turn over the banners week by week, so individual events are basically not helpful. I mean, what it looks like is something that we have concepts of. In an ideal world, it would look like this. What it's actually gonna end up looking like, I think, is very much to their example of the outdoor dining. 5 years from now, it's gonna be better than it is next year.
Right.
And everybody's gonna learn from this, and probably city ordinances are gonna be opened up in such a way once they learn more about how this first iteration
So in
goes.
your opinion, it's still worth to keep pushing them to pursue it?
Yeah.
Because another thing that I imagine, okay, they do this information, the parameters and the criteria and the submission form is out in the world. No one knows about it, so we will have to, you know. work
I think
through it.
the frustrating thing for me in concept is when the Public Art Review Committee receives submissions and they have funding under their control that they then choose to give to this, that, or whatever, they also have review of those submissions. And they know, you know, that city is looking over their shoulder and making sure, but they trust the experts there.
Yeah.
And in this instance, we're just we're not actually in the sandbox with them figuring it out.
Yeah. I feel like that was one of the goals of this, was to have something, a program that the commission could be a part of. Like Public Art Review Commission has their percent for art that they oversee, that this would be something that would be ours, but it feels like we gave them an idea. They have come up with a way to do it, and And I understand why they do it with a very restrictive edges around it from the standpoint of staff and money and legal. I think it will get better, but I think at the same time, we should probably also be looking at signage ordinance. I think it's easier to amend something that already exists than to build something from scratch. And I think at that price point, it's hard. It's gonna rule out a lot of nonprofits who want, and to your point, if you can't get sponsors to put their logo on it.
So yeah, you're not gonna get the sponsors in any other package if they don't have their logo on it.
Yeah.
$8,000 for 32 banners around town for one organization though isn't bad marketing benefit.
2
for your
months or for 3
you know,
months. It's a
Like that is
good chunk of time.
a lot of exposure, but it's gotta be open to more than one.
An idea, what if instead of being event-specific banners, they were organizations?
Yeah, I
They were
think
named.
that's, yeah, I think that's what it has to be.
I think it,
Yeah, because also I think that they can take great pride in saying, you know, the players are go check them out. They are staples of our and then no matter what is in there at the time, you get to explore it. But at least because also, again, as what I was saying about the quality of what's in what's happening in that, you know, let's say that, I mean, I have great trust in that the players ring, but what if, you know, something, you know, I don't know. I think.
Well, you also wouldn't want it up for like a season when you're closed. Like you wouldn't want your banners up if it's during the summer and you don't have a lot of programs in the summer.
But it's just your name, you're beautiful. Yeah, so maybe it's.
Margarita, to your point, my nonprofit doesn't have a home. I pop up at places.
Right.
What's that? How do we address the 1% that doesn't have a building or
Yeah, so
place?
is it your website? Is it, what is it?
It could be poetry month, it could be advertising the
Well,
entire.
we do that with poetry in the windows.
Yeah. No, but there could be something that's just broader and not location specific.
Yeah. Thinking like the gondola would be a great cultural thing for it, but then the Ports and Harbor Cruise might get upset because they're for profit.
Exactly.
Shows, so it's gonna be hard to balance.
Well, can we take the idea of dial it back to something we can control more? I mean, speaking for the PPLP, when we did the poetry in the windows, my biggest feedback was we found it because of the newsletter.
Oh, really? The city
The
newsletter?
city newsletter was how we got the lion's share of that to come through.
Yeah.
This is what I'm thinking about in terms of signage, and I only know this from having worked at Exeter and hosted the big festival, was what you're talking about worked because it was on private property. So you just had to get the property owner's permission to do it. So where you could do signage like we did in Exeter was there was someone at the corner of the major intersection in the road into town who owned an auto shop and would let you hang a banner on his chain link fence of your upcoming event. Like, so there's kind of a way you can go around the city perimeters by finding someone who's on a very convenient street corner who would let you.
Like Avery Insurance maybe,
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, who would let you put up some sort of signage or there was an understanding. Also in Exeter, we had a massive like town bulletin board and you could rent space to hang your event. It was like a community board, but you rented space to put your event poster on that community board directly in front of town hall. So I think we can also maybe look and see if there are other signage. I don't know of any off the top of my head that the city already has to advertise city events.
Kiosk is a great example.
Yeah, kiosk at the chamber is like, we could work with the chamber to say, would you be willing to, what would that look like as a partnership with the chamber?
Yeah, it's hard because people put up whatever during all times on the kiosk. So we have our visitors assistants look around and see who's members and take them off, or if something's looking a little weathered, they'll take them off. I don't know if that's violating free speech now that I'm thinking about it, because I didn't have that lens before. And then over the winter, we put up protective covers on it that promotes different city events. Like for the winter, we do Vintage Christmas, shopping, local love, and then in the spring, it's for Restaurant Week and Hit the Decks.
Is there any talk within the chamber to digitize that
There,
structure? Because it seems like that would be the perfect spot, that it's already there.
Yeah.
Just put a.
we've had some, we don't own that kiosk, the city does. And through their Market Square redevelopment plan, which is ongoing right now, there is talks about potentially upgrading the structure.
Okay.
What that would look like, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 Do we have any control of the newsletter from the city? Can we get the footer or the header to take the banner idea, but put it at the bottom of the email or the top of it, and then go into?
It's a question for Monty and Stephanie.
Yeah.
Oh, but they've
Good
told us
idea.
before.
For which purpose, to broadcast the banner
Take the
program?
banner idea that I just heard, that I just drank from a fire hose with.
Yeah.
So promoting individual events and organizations.
Individual events, organizations, but putting it on the city newsletter, have a template or see if we can get a format to
I
work.
mean, as far as city approval of this is by our standards or this is not by our standards, I don't see why there would be a difference between them approving a banner or approving something in their newsletter.
There's less labor cost.
There's there's no.
That's the
labor
biggest.
cost,
Yeah.
essentially, yeah.
Well, to
Except
run,
I'm-
to do
yeah.
a moving banner across a website, I mean, I could do that. That is very easy. And you just set up the block and maybe 1 week it's PMAC and the next week it's, you know, the Historic Society. But I think that's actually a really good idea to be thinking about. Or at the very least, tagging on your idea, could we not run a banner across our website that's digitized, you know, I'm just
Yeah,
thinking.
I've just been thinking back to how
It's not difficult.
the city, and I don't know, because then I'm like, well, how does the banner program gonna work? How they don't want to promote specific organizations. So to have a rolling banner on the city website that only says specific organizations, all I can hear is, why not ours? Why not ours?
Yes.
Why not ours? Especially because then, at least the labor with the banners, like obviously it's like, okay, there's like a little bit of a barrier to entry. But with the banner on the webpage, it's like, well, why can't you change it next week? Why can't you change it for every
We
2 days?
Still have some parameters to it.
It definitely, yeah, but that's just the way I see that working. Not that it's not a good idea. And also when they were saying like what can go hand in hand, like something I didn't talk about, but was thinking of was like social media. Like once again, just posting about events on some sort of cadence, whether or not that comes from us. But then again, like that is labor again.
It was interesting hearing them talk because yes, to Margarita's point, I do think this is worth nudging, pushing them forward because I see 5 years from now this working better than it does next year. That's my personal opinion on it, but I do think they have proven success on programs like this. They've put a lot of time in already. They voted 12 hours or whatever. I wouldn't want this to be a failing effort for them or something that, you know, they hope is going to be successful. They think they're following the ordinance, but $8,000. I'm trying to imagine which nonprofit would pay that right now.
Jimmy's, and that's a stretch.
They're
Well,
not.
and they can't, and
They can't, they're
they're
not.
Oh, yeah, I
basically
know,
putting
they
the
did
kibosh
that,
on
yeah.
Jimmy's as well. Like, I don't even
I
think
think
that
it-
in the musical.
Just to put just to put your logo on and not even promote an event, like
Yeah.
your logo and your website, I don't think anyone would see that as a good.
And so I would give them feedback and tell them to look at Park and how Park reviews things. Don't reinvent it entirely. When they're considering a piece of public art, it often does not have words on it. So therefore they get past first speech, freedom of speech and some of those potential sticky issues that they're considering will likely come up or will probably come up. I don't know, but a piece of art can be just as politically charged and they approve those all the time. So I think they're very worried about fitting within certain constraints. It's going to be too narrow. But I still think it's worth pushing forward as however, wherever it gets to, I don't know.
I had one other thought to maybe drive the cost down, because it seems a lot of it was staffing to get these actually up and in place. Is I'm just wondering if anybody's aware of in any situation where we have volunteers that are putting up something, whatever it is across the city, and could there not be a group of volunteers that put this up? I mean, this is not, it does not seem.
Liability carrying.
Volunteers put up the scarecrows at the port.
I
Put
mean,
up the what?
So
That's the scarecrows at the port.
Oh.
That's a all volunteer led effort.
And they were on ladders?
Oh yeah, we're on ladders. Yeah.
I just like,
So
and
that, case in point, that could potentially save a lot of money for the arts organizations if we have volunteers installing. the
I don't
banners.
think it's a liability. It's a liability for the city, so they would never allow volunteers up on a ladder to install these
But
things.
they're doing. the
We do
scarecrows.
scarecrows.
I think they look the other way for some of that. I think if Peter Rice had to approve that and if somebody came to Peter Rice and said this is unsafe or somebody got injured, it is a liability for the city.
Maybe we're not on ladders, now that I think about it.
But actually more thinking, there's the liability of the personal danger of the person that goes up, but there's also what if the job is not done properly
Yeah.
and the
It
banner
falls on
falls
somebody,
down and
yeah.
hits someone?
Yeah, but it's not, I don't see any different than building a house for Habitat for Humanity. I mean, you file, you're gonna have to sign a waiver probably, but I don't know, I think we just have to
Yeah.
get out of the box, and
Creative,
if the
yeah.
price tag is gonna be the barrier, how can we help get the price down? And I think there would be volunteers across the city that might be willing to do that, so.
I think maybe too, yeah.
I don't understand the sponsorship thing. Get a print company to get their logo on every single one that's put out there, and have it. Maybe it's just a discount on the price, but
Yeah, yeah.
you don't think Alpha Graphics would want 32 banners with their logo and something else on it? But
It's because they're not thinking about it that way.
they're
They're not
absolutely
thinking about it with us, and it's interesting. I felt like this whole conversations are Jason really wanted it, and then I felt like it happened and we weren't really involved in it much, and now it's coming back to us, and I'm like, wait, what?
Well, all
Like, and then they're like, no, we don't need you
Yeah.
to do anything with it, but it's supposed to be for people. It's
Like us.
Yes. I don't know. It's interesting. So I'm thinking maybe,
I think Kate Cook had comments on that. Essentially, it's going to be
Yeah.
easier to get it in there if we just put it onto the city manager to create something.
yeah,
I don't think it was written into the ordinance that we would have any discretion over what it looked like.
Yeah.
Not
Maybe.
even the words in collaboration with the Arts and Culture Division. And it was just simpler that way. It was just simpler to get it through.
Does anyone know if the city got pushback on the 400 banners?
I'm
Not
not
that I'm
even sure
aware
the
of.
kind of approval they had. Like, did they approve the design?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
It
I
was all
just know-
privately funded. Did they have any control over it, except donating their time?
Standard logo for the four
I
hundred,
think
right?
so.
Yeah. Some of the issues though were,
Yeah.
there are the different size light poles have different size brackets. That was part of the issue, I know. We ended up with all the banners after.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yes. Yeah, they gave them to us.
You guys are just this for
Bonfire.
everything.
I'm not gonna say we did that, I'm not gonna say we didn't do that, but yeah. We ended up with all of them after they'd been like out on the streets all year, so they were covered in stuff. It was awful. But they were different sizes, and I know that was part of the issue too, is like there's not one standard size for the brackets and the light poles. There were like the shorter ones and the taller ones, because whenever they put them in, they hadn't really thought about a banner program. So this has been really helpful to have this conversation and hear this feedback. I think what I'll do is follow up with Counselor Cook and ask her what her hot take on this is and what she recommends we do. And also I want to broach the like, is there also another way we can get at this, whether it's signage ordinance or some other ordinance that we can try to tackle this marketing piece of how do we get our arts and culture nonprofits to get this better visibility in town? This was, I feel like at the core of it was that better visibility for our arts and cultures nonprofits when
Yeah.
there isn't one central location to everyone to go to. And as we heard with the cultural plan, people saying, I don't know where to get the information from. Like, where's the one place I go to get all the events in town? People don't know. And we thought if we just have it on the street for people to see, that's very obvious. But that's not going to be as easy, I think, as we thought. I'm actually not surprised, but I will talk to Counselor Cook about how she thinks we should.
I'd also say if any of us want to speak as just citizens or whatever, you can always reach out to Karen and send
Yeah.
feedback and say, I think in spirit, this was the original intent, or I'm wondering, have you ever thought about this? She's very responsive over email.
Yeah. I think I think it was Karen said that Avery Insurance, like, I just had this idea that maybe could go hand in hand or be a interim of like corporate nonprofit speed dating where they like are matched up. Corporations that are interested could be matched up with a local nonprofit that they could like promote them or like be in partnership with them, and they might have specific interests. Probably already has some of that, but like from NHAA's perspective, I feel like we struggle locally, like with all of the other nonprofits of like, who will sponsor us? Who already has sponsorships that they're like pressing for? Can we share the money there? Like that's been our big thing, just because like gallery art specifically is somewhat of a luxury sell right now. So it's been a struggle all year. And I'm sure every nonprofit is feeling that in a different way as well.
Yeah.
So
Teresa, one thing, I was talking with Emily when we were at the meet and greet.
yeah.
And she was saying that the board was gonna be voting on individual artists that aren't juried could be members of the New Hampshire Art Association. Again, I'm just thinking ahead that Jeffrey, Eli, I mean, Eli's with PMAC, but I would have no ability to participate in this banner program even if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But if we could be members, and she was saying there was going to be an individual membership that was going to be potentially open to, then I might be able to come in under the New Hampshire Art Association as maybe, I don't want to speak for Jeffrey, but could we be thinking ahead on that? Because we have
Yeah,
a whole other audience that wants to
I
be
have my
considered for
board
this, and that
meeting
is
on
individual
Wednesday.
artists. And I'm seeing that as probably the easiest kind of ticket in, is maybe it's through our membership, or it could be through the collaborative, but I think more individual artists are likely members or want to be members of the New Hampshire Art Association, if they're
I'm
not
in the
already.
same boat because I'm not really an artist, and so I'm like, how do I help and participate in these things
Yeah.
besides being a part of the governing group? So
We could get maybe an update on that.
Yeah,
Because
I
that
have my
could
board meeting
be,
on
that could be
Wednesday. I
good
can
timing as we're
push on that.
sifting through all those.
Yeah, I would have to reread that city council thing, but I don't see that as not as, if you're for profit, you cannot participate. That's not how I just listened to
I
it.
remember we had a long conversation about that too.
Yeah, the whole point was so that you don't push out places like Jimmy's.
Yeah,
And
because they're still contributing to the arts and culture.
And even amongst them,
And they're
Peter seemed to indicate that Jimmy's does partner with organizations to support them getting signage. And then Trevor seemed to say, no, it can't be for profit. So I think they need more
Yeah.
clarity, and possibly we could impress upon them
Yeah.
that the way it's written does give them the ability to say this works or this doesn't work. This organization fits these criteria or not. But I don't think it's just a blanketed no for-profit thing,
Great. All right.
not the way it's written currently.
All helpful feedback I will bring to Counselor Cook and either ask her to send us an email update via Sean. I think Sean is out this whole week, so it probably wouldn't come till next week. Or ask her at our next meeting to give us some more context and guidance specifically on this. But I agree with your thoughts and feedback of, it feels like they're not quite under, all of our understandings of the ordinance are a little bit different, and we all need clarity on that in order to understand how to best move this forward. But it sounds like we're in agreement. It's right to move it forward. We also want to keep options open for other ways we can help increase marketing exposure in the downtown area. I was surprised to hear them talk about all these gateways. That's lovely, but also I feel like at least for downtown core to pilot of how we can do that, since that's where so many of just the foot traffic is. Even if the business isn't there, that's where the people are. So, all right.
I have an education work group report.
We do. Go for it.
With apologies, I was sick and I had to miss the last meeting, and this group has just taken a while to get off the ground. We have a good list of our priorities and what we want to be focusing on and people we want to be meeting with. And we have our first meeting set up with some of the department heads and
Department head.
superintendents with the school system next week, on Wednesday next week.
Yes.
So I'll have more to report at our next meeting. I mean, the work group will, and
Yes.
so thank you guys for your patience with that.
Great, thank you. I know Linnea also had on here the work group community interest. You shared, Margarita, the folks at Housing Authority are interested in joining collaboration and resources to keep that moving forward. They seem very aligned with us on the feasibility study. We've also had an inquiry from someone. We every now and again will get inquiries from folks who want to join the commission when we tell them we don't have room right now for members, but we offer them the work groups. Folks are very much taking us up on that. And I've been in touch with someone who works over at the Black Heritage Trail. When I gave her the different work groups, she said, I'll join anyone. So I might try to have a conversation with her first, but not for today because we're nearly out of time, but something we should think about. Linnea and I are fielding these inquiries and trying to manage them the best we can. Like when they wanted to join, I put them in touch with Margarita as the work group leader to get that conversation going. But if we need to come up with a process for how folks are joining work groups, we're happy to have that discussion. We've kind of been using our best judgment, but every time someone reaches out, we're like, we should actually talk about what the process is behind this. Again, not for commission members, but for folks joining our work groups. my thought is at this point, it's kind of a yes to anyone who wants to join, just to get folks in. But I have usually tried to have a conversation with people to figure out where they best fit and guide them in a certain direction. So I will have this conversation with Gina from the Black Heritage Trail and see where she might be the best fit for us.
Gina's great too.
Yes, yeah. Do you happen to know, knowing our work groups and knowing her, where she might be the best fit? I can help point her in a.
This isn't helpful, but any one of them really, she'd
Okay,
be
good.
great.
Okay.
She's just like super adaptable and easy to work with.
I would say she would have been great with the DEI work group.
Oh, yeah.
And wherever we've spread out those priorities across all, I mean, I could see her really helpful in basically any of the ones we have.
What's her last name?
Bowker.
BOWKER.
So I will follow up with her and try to have a preliminary conversation, tell her a little bit more about what we're doing and go from there. And if anyone else hears from folks who are interested in work groups, my feeling at this point has just been put them in touch with the group leader, so to speak, and let the group leader or the work group leader take it from there.
My initial instinct is possibly education on Gina's, because of we will be considering social studies education, some of the historic educational components of what's being taught, what's not being taught, where the help is needed.
And Elaine, how many are in your work group? You have 3 or you have 4? Okay, and we have 5, so that's okay.
Yeah, she also has a huge like production experience, Gina, like she's been working at the as a stage manager. So I'm thinking, selfishly, we will be having, not if and when the feasibility study, we will be organizing like focus groups and meetings and things like that. So
that's what she's passionate about.
I think that's what she's passionate about. But yes,
That's great.
All right.
I had a burning issue to bring up.
Sure, go for it.
When I was at the Cabot Street Fair, the Cabot Square Day, John Marr was mentioning to me that there's a historic barn on Coffin's Court. You know about this. Slated to be torn down with a McMansion to be built in its place. And we have talked about pillar number 5 and wanting to promote a demolition policy for the city, which is lacking at the moment.
Correct.
And here's another example of not having a policy in place is allowing another historic building to be demolished. And so I'm just bringing it up again in the context of whether our group could make a statement, a policy statement to the city council recommending a serious demolition policy be established outside of the HTC.
Yes, and I think education and advocacy work group is gonna take that on. Eli, I'm looking at you. That's under our like education on the preservation side too.
Yeah.
That's in our wheelhouse. So we're gonna talk about that next week. I'm having that discussion with John and Portsmouth advocates too. For a bit of background, there are some restrictions at the state level in terms of what you can do for demolition. Basically, it's a demolition delay. It allows you additional time to come up with other solutions rather than going forward. We do have a demolition review committee in Portsmouth. As far as I know, that's been rather defunct for the last few years, even perhaps. There is the HGC that reviews things in the historic district. As you know, there's a lot of development happening outside the historic district, and there's no real vehicles for folks to contest or, contest demolition outside the historic district. And I have heard at ZBA meetings that the ZBA say historic preservation is not one of their priorities, which it is per the city master plan, and our city ordinances, but that's okay. So, that is something I'm gonna bring up with our work group and advocates is doing. So, yes, I think we should say something about it, but let us like workshop that with the work group and then bring something forward to the commission on that.
And isn't there talk about a possible heritage district too? So that goes outside of historic, but so maybe that's something we could get an update on.
Counselor Cook and I have, bandied about that, so that can sometimes be hard to get through. But the demo review at least is in place and it would just be updating the existing ordinance. So I think that's probably that is gonna be, as we've seen, updating an existing ordinance rather than building a new ordinance from
Yeah.
scratch. It's probably gonna be the faster way, but I thank you for bringing that up. That is something that is.
This is
top of mind.
Offense Court is a little street that nobody ever sees. It goes between Cabot Street and Union Street.
Oh, that one.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
Halfway down, well, like John's house is that brick
Yep,
building.
yep. Yep.
And like halfway, like 2 buildings down from it is it's brown with a big slant roof. And that's what we're discussing.
How long has that been set for possible demolition?
few months
I-
now.
April, I see an article, I think, if it's. the same
Yeah, it
building.
was the ZBA meeting. The owners of it, it was bought by a developer and they got an ordinance change. They had to go to ZBA only to get an ordinance change to demolish the barn and build a multi-million-dollar house in its place. And they got approval to do that because the ZBA said, as much as they care for historic preservation, it's not in there. Technically, they met the criteria of the variance, so they approved the variance. So, yeah, if you wanna really get yourself worked up, you can watch that. But anyway, so there's some education that needs to happen with the ZBA, with the planning board, with these other boards outside the HDC to get them to understand that historic preservation per the city master plan, per the cultural plan, per the city ordinances is a priority. So there's education there, and then there's also the demo review, so. Thank you.
Sounds like the demo review board needs to be restaffed. If you say it's
Staffed
defunct,
and-
like they need,
And given some teeth.
yeah,
Now it's a pretty light review. They can't
Yeah.
really stop anything. But having that delay, in Massachusetts, they have if you get a demo delay, it's a year waiting period.
Yeah.
You have to figure out funding, another use, adaptive reuse. We don't have that,
yeah.
so.
But I just wonder, is it,
Whatever adaptive reuse is not gonna be profitable.
Can be,
Can be?
Can be.
Well,
it's really only a matter, adaptive reuse is expensive, so you have to have someone who's willing to fund the capital for it. And a lot of times it's,
but it's not like a $2 million house.
no, not likely at the end, but still a good profit margin. Okay, thank you for bringing that up. I recognize we're out of time, so I'll just mention the last burning issue was Linnea and I are meeting with 2 reps from the Economic Development Commission. Do you remember maybe at our last meeting, Sean or Kate told us that they wanted to start a work group on like arts and culture, to which they said there's a whole commission for that. So we are meeting with them to basically tell them,
Don't do it.
yeah, what we are doing, what we are working on, and figure out ways to work together. So we're working with City Councilor Flynn and one other woman on that Economic Development Commission. So we will report back on how that meeting goes. And our next meeting will be July 19th. Oh, look at that, at Portsmouth Historical Society. I totally remembered that at 1 o'clock. And can I, unless there's anything else anyone wants to bring to the group, can I get a motion to adjourn? Okay,
second.
great. Okay, second, all in favor?
Well, Andrea, just wait.
All right.
Andrea just walked in.
Yeah, she's here for the next
Our
meeting.
meeting.
She's
Oh,
right
for the next.
She's right on time.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everyone.
It's supposed to be on the third
It's not
floor.
here, yes.
That's why I wanted to kind of run upstairs.
Yes.
Anybody's.
Say this all as
So,
recorded.
I don't know. Oh, good.